Hello, college hoops fans. This is Brian Tonsoni of Delphi Bracketology coming to you live from the basement of my house at my podcast studio here in Delphi, Indiana. We're going to be joined shortly by junior Daniel Jakes. He's printing off his bracket as we speak, or our most recent bracket. He's ready with some good answers tonight, and we're going to discuss college basketball and what we think the bracket would look like if the committee of the NCAA selected the teams tonight. So we're doing this every week. As we get closer to March, it's going to be a lot easier to seed the teams and to put them in a bracket, but we're enjoying talking basketball each and every week. We meet as a group every Thursday in the morning and discuss things. We're now in the process of starting our voting procedures 1 through 68, and we take an average of those teams, and that kind of influences our brackets. And that bracket, the voting bracket, will start out on Sunday. We've been throwing together these brackets relatively quickly on Sundays as the games end. The procedure for us to decide who is the number 1 seed, who is the number 2 seed, is basically what the NCAA tournament does. We don't know for sure how they select, but we know they look at top 50 wins, top 100 wins, who you beat, road wins, bad losses, strength of schedule, and they start out by ranking teams through RPI. We try to use that to determine who will be seated at each line 1 through 16, and then we try to bracket them according to the rules. The easy part, if you can call it easy, is 1 through 68. The difficult part is putting them in bracket according to the rules of who gets to play where and who matches up. So with that, let me get started with our seeding, top seeds each week. Number 1 seed overall is Oklahoma. Number 2 seed is North Carolina. Number 3 seed is the Kansas Jayhawks. And the 4th number 1 seed is Villanova. And as Daniel, when he comes on tonight, will tell you that we had a huge discussion about who should get that 4th number 1 seed. Our number 2 seeds, Iowa and Xavier, are the top 2 number 2 seeds. They both were talked about heavily in our group about being placed on that number 1 line. Iowa lost a tough road game, which really shouldn't hurt them. But with Kansas winning, Villanova has beaten Xavier. Villanova's high in the RPI. We settled on Villanova right now. And again, a lot of time to decide that. So we think Iowa and Xavier are the top number 2 seeds. And we have a couple other 2 seeds. Oregon is really playing well. We believe they're good enough to be a 2 seed. And we also have, as our last number 2, Virginia, who had a bad stretch about 2 weeks ago, has really played some good basketball and really took it to Louisville. And we thought that win on the road was enough to move them up to a 2 seed. Our 3 seeds, we have Texas A&M. Maryland has had a really good week with 2 nice victories. Michigan State is getting back to winning ways at the number 3 seed. And we also have Iowa State. Any of those teams can make a push to move up. We believe the number 1 seeds are going to come from those top 6 seeds for the most part. And then our number 4 seeds, Miami, Florida, Baylor, West Virginia, and Utah. And as we'll talk later this week, or later in the show, you will see where West Virginia has a real tough week, a chance to really do some resume building with some wins. So those are our top 4 seeds. We believe those teams are pretty entrenched in the tournament. You can also check out our bracket at delphibracketology.weebly.com or our Twitter page at Delphi Brackets. You can then see the entire bracket for all 68 teams. We believe that seeds 5, 6, and 7 are pretty comfortable. They just got to avoid a lot of losses. If you're in the 8 through 12 range, you are in jeopardy of one bad stretch costing you and moving you off the bubble. And we have a few teams that are not in the bracket right now that we do believe have a chance still to be in. We see some teams also making late pushes. Wisconsin, LSU, tough loss the other day to Oklahoma, but they're sitting right on the outskirts of the tournament, and we believe that they will have a chance with some quality wins of getting back in the tournament. So we think those seeds pretty much match up with all of the people that we follow. Andy Bottoms of Assembly Call will put out his bracket tomorrow. We'll match that up. at Shelby Mast at Bracketwag on Twitter. He has done a nice job of sharing some information with us via podcast. We check his podcast quite a bit, and we match up very well with him. There are a few teams that we disagree. We also check ESPN, Joe Lenardi. We also check Jerry Palm at CBS. One of the better ones is a gentleman, I believe, from Wisconsin, at Bracket Guy Dave on Twitter. And he has a corresponding webpage that really explains his reasoning for his seed list and his bracket procedures. So that is our discussion of our top seeds. We're now going to go to teams that we think are interesting seeds, either teams that are pretty good, seeded low, that might drop, or teams that are seeded somewhat high and may need to be moved up, or if they win a few games, they'll be moved up. And we're still awaiting Daniel as he is trying to print off a bracket, I believe. And when he gets here, we will click on his microphone and get his opinion. But until then, seeds of interest. The tough seeds for us so far are teams like Florida that only have 1 or 2 top wins. Where do you put them? Maryland was floating around a 4 and a 5 seed for a long time, and then they beat Iowa, so we kind of moved them up to a 3, but they don't have a huge resume. Louisville has a huge chance. They're playing right now against North Carolina to get a big win to move them up from a 6 or a 7 where you're finding them in many brackets. So those are teams that you look at that you think are having good years. They have a great win-loss record, but they haven't really beaten anyone. My team, Indiana, is that way. They have one top 50 win. Excuse me there. One top 50 win. I don't think they're, anything but an 8, 9, 10 seed right now. So those are some seeds of interest. Daniel, I see you're back. I'm going to click on you and get a drink and take care of this issue that I'm having. But talk to us about the top seeds and any teams that you find interesting. Unmute your mic, Daniel. Unmute your microphone. There we go.
Hold on. I did unmute it. I'm having problems here.
We can hear you fine now, Daniel.
Okay. Some things that I found interesting about the bracket. I find it pretty interesting that we're still giving Nova that 1 seed. I understand that they're ranked 2nd in RPI, but I mean Oregon's ranked 3rd. They have 1 strength of schedule higher than Nova at 5. They're 6-1 against the top 50. Although they are 6-2 against the top 100, while Nova's 5-0, but Nova is also 4-3 against the top 50. So I mean, they're both getting solid chances to play, but I mean, I think it comes down to the top 50 scale.
So you're saying that we should consider putting Oregon in ahead of Xavier, ahead of Iowa. Is that correct?
I think that it could be put into play, yeah. Mm-hmm. Iowa, their strength of schedule is 8. They're 7-4 against the top 50. That's 11 games. They haven't played anybody in between the 51-100 scale. But they have played 11 games also against the top 50. So, I mean, that could very well make up for not playing any teams between 51 and 100. But, what Daniel's saying, too, is for our listeners, which is really interesting, you look at the rankings, and Oregon's sitting, 17, 18. Some polls have them at 23rd, and some people might say, how can you have Oregon in the top line or the top 2 lines? And that would be equal to a 1 through 8 seed. Ranking and pollings done by writers and coaches are very different than what the committee does. And so what you're hearing from Daniel is some really good evaluation of the data, the wins and who you're played and strength of schedule, which many voters may not look at. And I think the polls reflect more of how you're playing recently. And since Oregon is a surprise
it's taken them a long time to move up and into the polls. So I think, Daniel, I think you're right on. I think we need to watch Oregon. Who else do you see interesting here that we need to keep an eye on to possibly move up in our bracket?
One team that I think could be a real smasher in the come postseason time is Providence. They have a big game Saturday against Villanova, I believe, at Providence. That could be a huge win for them. Right now it's ranked 6-10, with Nova being number 6. Chris Dunn and Ben Bentil, I believe those two players could be considered come Wooden Award watch top 25 players, with Chris Dunn going to the top 10.
I like that. I like that team. I like that game. And Providence, a week or so ago, just beat Villanova in overtime, I believe, at Villanova.
Yeah. So, I mean, they can sweep the season series from them and possibly get that number 1 overall in the Big East.
We have Providence at a 4 right now, I believe, correct?
Yeah. No, we have them at a 6.
Oh, at a 6.
Yeah.
So they might even be ready to move up regardless of what they do over the weekend. But
yeah,
we have Providence at a 6. Potentially could be in a 3 or a 4 if they win a game like that on Saturday. Who else do you see as teams to watch as far as moving up in our bracket?
One other team that I think we could watch is Gonzaga. I said it last week during our discussion. Kyle Wiltjer. I mean, they're just always ready to come postseason, and I think that's something that we need to watch. He's a senior this year. I think that's another team that we could watch come tourney time.
Yeah, I find it hard to look at Gonzaga. I look at their record, and they only have 5 losses, and I think they're good enough to play in the tournament. When you watch them play, and as you said, that traditionally they have been a strong tournament team, yet you look at that information that the tournament committee selects teams from, and they're struggling a little bit with top 50 wins and strength of schedule. And unfortunately, their conference doesn't afford them too many chances to add to that. So you wonder if reputation is going to help them a little bit, or do they have to run the table and put together a string of wins regardless of top 50 and go to 23-6. And that would be hard to keep a team like Gonzaga out regardless of who they play if they make a good run in their tournament and maybe go on and win the tourney. You have St. Mary's, I believe, in that same conference, and they have a chance to possibly – some people think that conference would be a one-bid only conference. Whoever wins their tournament goes. But I think you'll see St. Mary's and Gonzaga possibly in there. Who else are you looking at, Daniel, in the bracket for either moving up or possibly moving down?
Another team that I could see moving down is hold on, Duke. They fell out of the top 25 for the first time in 167 weeks. Come this poll Monday, they're just sliding. I mean, they've lost 4 of their last 5. I don't think they were as strong as they were believed to be this year. We have them as a 6 right now. I think they could even fall lower than that.
I think you're right on spot with Duke. I had trouble keeping them there at a 6, but one of the things, again, for our viewers with the bracket purposes, it's you see Duke, they're losing games, you want to move them down, but you also have to find teams to move up in the bracket. And some of our 7s, Colorado and Michigan, possibly could move into that 6. That's probably the flip that I would make, Michigan for Duke. You have some other teams. Florida had a nice win. So, yeah, we have some room. Arizona lost this week. So there's another team that might be on the slide. What do you think about Arizona, Daniel?
They have that big center in Caleb Tarczewski. They seem to be on ESPN all the time with Bill Walton calling their games.
I love my bike.
Yeah. I was watching their Arizona-Oregon game, and he rubbed dirt on his face, and I was kind of concerned.
You kind of get the whole experience, basketball and life, when Bill Walton does a game, correct?
Yeah. But 2 teams that I can see coming out of that Pac-12, UCLA and USC play each other this weekend. Mm-hmm. That could be a great chance for the Bruins to get a win at USC. I believe that's where it is. We have USC as a 5 right now. I don't think UCLA is in. That
Correct.
could be a good win for their bubble resume. And,
I like UCLA. I've seen them play on television. I like what I see, but they've piled up some losses, and those losses are going to be tough to overcome. And I think you'll see down the road that they'll put enough wins together to possibly sneak in as a 10, 11, or 12, similar to what they did last year. But that Pac-12, that game USC-UCLA this weekend is going to be a fun game to watch. Mm-hmm. What else do you have for us, Daniel?
Texas A&M. I'm a big fan of Carlismo, their point guard. Daniel House. He was suspended the first couple games this year. He really broke out in their Battle for Atlantis game against Syracuse. And since then, he's been playing at a pretty consistent level, 20 points a game, 8 rebounds or so. They beat a good Iowa State team this past Saturday during the SEC Big 12 Challenge. That could really help their resume. It was a home game, but I mean, Iowa State has been a pretty consistent program for the last couple of years, and that could prove to be a pretty good win for them.
Yeah, I'm interested in watching Texas A&M too. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't think they were that strong, a 2 or a 3 seed, other than their record and resume looked that way. But I was wanting to watch them play some good teams. They did win at home, but Iowa State is a quality opponent. I'd like to see. I don't believe they've played Kentucky yet. Is that true, Daniel? I don't have their schedule in front of me, but that would be something to show. You know, Kentucky's sitting here at a 4 in our bracket, or 5 in our bracket. And we really could put them as a 4. That Kansas loss in overtime shouldn't really hurt their resume. But I think Kentucky will be a 3 or 4, and I think it'll be between Kentucky and Texas A&M. Maybe Florida sneaks in, but you might have three teams there from that conference. I'm going to ask about teams that I have struggled with seeding. Baylor as a 4 and Dayton as a 5. Their resumes look halfway decent, but I'm not sold on either of those teams. Daniel, what do you think of Baylor and Dayton? And for those of you watching, we just have another junior, Cole Rickles, joining us. Cole, we're sitting there on question 3 and 4 of our scheduled questions. Teams on the rise, teams on the decline. Okay. So teams that might fall lower in the bracket, win some games and go lower in the bracket, or teams that might lose and have to go a higher seed. So we'll come to you in just a second. But Daniel, what can you tell me a little bit about Baylor and Dayton? I think they're seeded a little bit too low and maybe should be 5s and 6s or maybe 6 and 7s. What do you think, Daniel?
I believe Baylor should be up. They were tied. I think they're tied for first place in the Big 12, which that's I mean, I've said this for a little while now. I believe that's the strongest conference in the country, and for them to be tied first, I mean, it says a lot about their character, and I mean, I don't think they're scared to play any of the big names.
I think you're right. I think you're right there. They have a confidence about them.
Yeah, and Dayton, I mean, sorry.
That's okay.
Dayton, it's just they're one of those teams that always seem to somehow sneak in, and
they're a good tourney team, aren't they?
Yeah.
They get in and they do some damage in the tourney.
Yeah, I see them doing that again this year. I mean, they beat Ohio State a couple years ago, and then they beat Syracuse, and they ended up playing Stanford.
When we go to games to watch, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but Baylor's got 2 tough games that could really help them stay at a 4 or move up. They play Texas, and they play West Virginia this week, so there's 2 chances of getting some quality wins. Cole, we'll come to you. What teams on our bracket do you think are going to be moving up or moving down in the bracket?
I said this last week as well. I still do believe, again, Duke this year. They're just not as strong as they've been lately. So again, I think Duke could even keep moving down the list. I think last week we had them at a 3, and then on some brackets they were seen as 7. We have them here as 6. I think there's something wrong with their season. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but they're not. I mean, they're definitely not impressing me. Teams that could be on the rise. I think Louisville will keep moving up. They seem like a very strong team this year. I think the ACC is a very strong conference. Daniel said Big 10 or Big 12 is a big conference. ACC always has a few powerhouses that come in, and they seem like they always really rule the conference. So I'd have to stick with the ACC here and say Louisville will be moving up, and I'd say Duke is moving down.
Okay, very good. And as we said a little bit earlier, North Carolina and Louisville are playing an ACC outstanding game right now as we speak. So when we're done, we'll have to check that out. A team that I'd like to ask you guys about is South Carolina. They have an outstanding record. I believe it's 18-2. We have them as a 10 seed. They have not played anyone in the top 50. No wins, no losses, and yet they're 18-2. You have to give them credit for starting out the season. I think they went 15 games before they lost a game. They're sitting at 18-2. They'll have a chance to get some wins here at the end of their conference season, but somebody might ask us, how do you put a team that's 18-2 as a 10th seed equal to 37th through 40th on our seed list? What do you think? Are they worthy of that 10? Should they be better seeded? Should they be out of the tournament? We'll start with you, Cole.
I think they do deserve to be in the 10 spot. I mean, as you said, they went 15 games before losing. No matter the strength of your schedule, I mean, playing 15 straight wins, no matter who you're playing, that's impressive. And I think it will come down to, I think they're sitting great at a 10 right now, and it's going to come down to that first, top 25 team, top 50 team. I mean, if they win, then we've proven ourselves right, and maybe they can, move up the bracket. But I think we're good at a 10 now. It's just going to come down to their first game where they play actually an admirable team.
Mm-hmm. And I don't have their schedule up in front of me, but I got to believe they're going to be playing Kentucky here, maybe even a Texas A&M and some of those again. So what do you think about a team like South Carolina, whose resume is really weak, but their record is outstanding, and where we have them in the bracket?
My problem with this is I'm going to read you a record of a team that we have on the as a 6 seed. Texas. They are 14-7, but their strength of schedule is number 3 overall. Right. South Carolina, we have them as a 10. They're 18-2, but their strength of schedule is 163. I feel like they could be lower.
Would you have them in the tournament, Daniel?
I would, just based on that record, but I would have them as an 11 or 12 seed, maybe even in a play. But
I was just going to ask you.
I think just because of that 18-2 record, we have to have them in. But teams that don't schedule very strong schedules. I mean, it's if you don't make it, say they go on a 5-game losing streak, that strength of schedule just proves that you didn't play anybody. And that 18-2 record, that's now an 18-7 record, that's just gone. Yep. And I think that a Seton Hall, which is 15-6, but their strength of schedule is 76, gets in over you.
Okay. And Daniel's made some good points. And this is what we're trying to get across to our group of students and teachers on this committee. It is not your record. It is not your ranking. It is your overall body of work, including strength of schedule. And the committee in the past has left off teams who do not have a strong strength of schedule and have a great record. So I think Daniel is spot on with that. And that's why we have teams like Texas and Florida, I believe, at 6s with 7 losses, and we have a team that's 18-2 at a 10, because I think that's happened in the past. And the tournament has kind of said to teams, go schedule people and then go play them. The problem is, and I'd like to see answered somehow, is if you go play a tough schedule and get beat. That was Florida a little bit until they beat West Virginia. But I think that West Virginia win kind of put Florida over the top. So those are some teams that we're thinking are on the rise or on the decline. We have a couple more topics to talk about now. We're going to switch to games this week that could affect teams on the bubble or just affect our seedings overall. I'm going to start off with a couple games, and I don't necessarily have them by date, but there's some outstanding games. We mentioned earlier, I'll just go with this for Baylor because they're a team that is confusing to me. Baylor plays Texas at Baylor during the week, and then on Saturday they travel to West Virginia. So I think you're going to learn something about a Baylor team. And West Virginia will play on the road at Iowa State and home against Baylor. So I think you'll see two of those Big 12 teams really learn a little something about themselves. Daniel, what games do you have?
I would say both of Florida State's games this week. They play tomorrow and Saturday. Tomorrow I think they play at Wake Forest, and then Saturday I don't remember who they play. But another game Saturday, that UCLA and USC game I mentioned earlier, that's going to be huge. That is going to have a lot of implications for the tourney, for their resume. We have Florida State as a 10 seed.
Yeah.
Don't see UCLA on here.
Yeah, they're like in the first 4 out, UCLA.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be huge for them if they can pull off that win at USC, which we have them as a 5 right now. Yeah,
and those are the types of things, again, Daniel's bringing up a lot of stuff about the committee. A UCLA win over a top 25 team, and if Florida State struggles against some non-top 25 teams, like Wake Forest, that could be the difference of moving a Florida State down lower and a UCLA up, and it's at this time of the year that bubble is just really volatile. So those are a couple good games. Cole, we're coming to you. What games do you see are going to influence either the bubble or the bracket as a whole?
Well, I've got three main games. The UNC at Louisville, that's obviously a big game. I mean, they're both ranked very, very well off in our bracket. So that's going to be a big game. West Virginia versus I think it's Iowa State. That's also going to be a big game. I mean, again, they're both very strong teams. And to bring it back to our state, I see Indiana versus Michigan being a good game too. I mean, if Indiana pulls off that win, I think that's going to move them up in our bracket more. I don't think Michigan's a top 25 team. But not yet. But I mean, if they can get that win off, then I think Indiana's more of one of our bubble teams. So just for Indiana to keep winning, it's going to be very beneficial.
And for the listeners too, Cole brings up something that is vital: road wins. You win on the road, period. That helps your resume. You win on the road against a top 50 RPI or a top 25 team, and that really helps your resume. So, an IU losing to Michigan, probably not going to drop them too far. Maybe a seed line at most compared to everyone else. But a win at Michigan really might put IU in a better situation because it's on the road. Daniel talked about UCLA at USC. That's a road game for the Bruins. If the Bruins can win against a top 25 team on the road, you see their resume boost, and instead of being in the first 4 out, they may jump up and grab one of the teams that we have in a play-in game: a Seton Hall, Clemson, Gonzaga. St. Joe's has 0 top 50 wins. UCLA wins against USC on Saturday, wins their other game this week. Those are the types of things, and you can see it now with our student panelists. They're starting to understand that it's not just the ranking or the polls. They're starting to do a real excellent job. I'm really proud of them for looking deep into the NCAA data. Purdue at Maryland, big game. For Purdue, they went on the road against Maryland. That's going to push them back into the 3 or 4 seed talk. Maryland has a questionable resume, so we'll see about that. Michigan State versus Michigan. And here's the biggie for me: Florida versus Kentucky. Florida has a somewhat okay resume. They went on the road against Kentucky. That's really going to boost them up. And Kentucky needs to beat Florida to get back into the 4 seed range. Okay, we're going to go to Cole. What teams do you think might jump into the bracket next week?
Well, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one real quick. I'm sorry.
All right, let me go to Daniel here. I'll come right back then.
All right.
I see if Clemson keeps doing what they're doing and keeps winning, I find it hard to keep them out.
I think we got them in, Daniel, as a 12 right now.
Yeah, we have them playing game. But, I mean,
they'll move up.
Yeah, I think they'll get out of that playing game and into the actual bracket. 13-8, but they're 6-4 against the top 50. That's 10 games. That's 10 great chances to have proven that you can win. That's 60. They've won 60% of those games. I think they should. I think teams that schedule more of those top 50 games, I think they should be rewarded for at least trying to make their schedule somewhat clear-cut resume, rather than St. Joe, who I don't think has even played a top 50 game.
Yeah.
I find that very hard to put those kinds of teams in.
Yep. For me, the team to watch is Wisconsin. They're sitting at 14-9, and if we look at their top 50 wins, the problem with Wisconsin is they have a tough schedule coming down the stretch, and I don't know how many more losses, even to good teams, that they can afford on their schedule, on their resume, and they have some really tough losses early on to some teams that they wish they would have back. But at 14-9, they are starting to make a late push. Temple is another team that could make a late push. Cole, you ready for a team to share with us? All right, who do you have?
Well, I'm looking through here, and I'm as we were talking about strength of schedule, I'm taking that into consideration, and I see number 1 here, and it's Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
And they're coming up as a little bit of a weaker of a team. I mean, they're about, I think it's 57 on RPI. Their schedule is just a 10-9. Their conference is 6-4. They're looking weak, but I mean, if the committee's going to be looking at that strength of schedule and they can pull away a couple conference wins or just a few just regular wins, I think they're going to take Stanford into consideration big time. I mean, if you have that strength of schedule, and even if you just have a mediocre season, I think that they can make it into the bracket.
Okay, well, that does it for our bracket babbling for this week. Next week, we're going to move our bracket babbling to Tuesday. I'm taking my son to see Kobe Bryant on Monday night here in Indianapolis, so we'll have to move our discussion to a Tuesday evening. But we'll have an updated bracket out for you on Monday. I would like to thank Cole Rickles and Daniel Jakes, 2 outstanding juniors, for their insight, and tonight they really spoke well to what the committee is doing, and I'm really happy with their discussion and their level of analysis of the data and of the teams that we're looking at. They're really doing an outstanding job, and I look forward to talking with them more each and every week. Follow us at Delphi Brackets on Twitter. Follow us on the web at delphibracketology.weebly.com. We have these recorded babblings there. We have the bracket, lots of information. We enjoy talking sports with you. If you have any questions, email me, tweet at me. We'll try to answer them next week. Until then, have a great week of watching college hoops. We'll see you.